Hi guys, welcome to my channel, First Byte Data Science, where I'm going to share with you guys contents related to data science, especially by using R language and RStudio. And for this new content, I'm going to share with you guys how to make code shorter, faster, and more efficient. The idea is that I will generate real-world problems that you may be interested, and after that, I will code mathematically by using mathematical logic. It may be too slow, it may be too long, I don't care. After that, I will show you guys how to make it shorter, faster, and more efficient. Okay, so this is aimed for intermediate and basic coders, not for professional, of course. All right. And at the end of every single video, I will share with you guys whether or not ChatGPT or some other AIs can help solve the problem or not. Okay. Okay. And this is a new content, first episode. If you guys are interested in more videos related to this topic, feel free to subscribe. I appreciate it. And if you guys have problems, concern, or have something that you want to share with me about this topic, you comment below in the comment sections. I appreciate it as well. Okay, so this is the first problem about healthcare, and it's not the real problem, not the real data set, because I don't have real data set to share with you guys. So I generated it. So let's say we have 100,000 diabetes patients. Each has 30 HbA1c results. And for your reference, normal range of HbA1c is below 6. Above 6 is considered pre-diabetes or diabetes. And let's assume that we consider 10 or above as severe. All right. And the problem is that we want to count the number of patients who have lab results 10 or above for more than 8 times out of 30 and record their IDs. All right. So that's the problem. And since I don't have a real data set, what I do is that I generated data set. It does not make sense, but let's say that we just try to imitate data set. It's not real, and we just want to make code shorter, faster, and more efficient. That's our intention. So what I do is that I set n to be the number of patient. I set p to be the number of lab result. I generate r exponential, which is the exponential distribution with mean 5, right? Okay, it doesn't make sense. You're gonna see, and we add ID from 1 to n, from 1 to 100,000 to the first column to be the IDs. All right. And after that, I show the head of data set. Let's see. Okay. So here is the head of the data set. You can see in the console below, right? So you can see that for the first column, it is the ID, right? 1 to 100,000. And for each row, represent one patient lab results. We have 30 lab results, right? And you can see that there's something like 0.14, which does not make sense, but it's okay. We just try to, make up the data set to work on this problem. All right. Okay, so for the first approach, I will try to make it as simple as I can by following mathematical logic, right? It may be too long, as I said, and after that, I will try to make it shorter and faster. All right. So for each approach, I will record runtime so that I can compare at the end. So I have start, right? System time, which is the time at the beginning. And then at the end, I check system time again, subtracted by start, so I get the total runtime for the whole thing, right? Okay, so for this approach, I start by setting up the ID vector, right? Empty one, and I run for loop from 1 to 100,000. That means I check every single patient separately. All right, so it take a lot of time for sure. And for the first step, right, I set up S to be 0. I want to count number of lab result for this patient, which is greater than equals 10. All right. So I run another loop for lab result from 1 to 30, right? But here, as you can see, I start at 2 because the first column is the ID, right? So I check that patient I, right? Whether or not that particular lab result is greater than equals 10. If it's greater than equals 10, I add 1 to S. That means I count the number of number of lab result for that patient, which is greater than equals 10, right? After that, I get S, right? S is the number of lab result, which is greater than equals 10. I check whether or not S is greater than 8. If it's greater than 8, I record the ID of that patient, right? Because I want to count number of patient that is under this condition. All right. From here, I want to check this condition. If it's greater than 8, I record the ID, right? And once I get the ID, right, I print the ID at the end and I print the link of the ID. So here's the list of the ID and here is the number of patients under that condition. All right. It looks long, but should be correct. I will try to check the correctness first. Okay. So from here to here without runtime. All right. So please try to remember that we have 1,478 patients under this condition. And if for any other approaches, we get the same result, it should be correct, right? Okay, so let's move on to the second approach, right? For the second approach, I don't do something much better, right? What I do is that I still using the for loop, right? I still using the for loop and I run the ID separately again, right? And then I find S again, right? Nothing new. But the only exception is that from here, right? I record the ID by adding the ID, right? Which is the column one, which is the ID of that patient to the original ID, right? By adding this vector, it takes a lot of time. What I do here, I do it differently. Instead of doing that, I record M, right? Which is the number of patients under this condition. So if S is greater than 8, I add 1 to M, right? That means I consider the number of patients with the number M, right? Then for ID, right? For ID vector, right? I put ID with the M component to be the ID of that patient, right? Which means I record the ID by adding to the vector, not like I connect the vector. This one is kind of like I have the original ID and then I add one more ID next to the original one. But this one, I just add it to the vector, which is faster. You can see at the end. All right. Okay. So that's the second approach. We can check that we get the same result. All right. Okay, so this is what I get. 1,478. So same, right? Okay, move on to approach number 3. So this time we'll make it shorter, faster. All right. So the idea is here. For the first two approaches, we have two for loops. They take a lot of time, right? So for the second for loop, it's the lab result. Now I try to handle lab result at once. That means I will handle the 30 lab result one time. All right. So the tip is here. R is really good to handle matrices and vectors. All right. So when you want to handle something big, you don't need to handle separately. What you can do is that you put into matrices or vectors and you handle every single one of them at the same time. All right. So for approach number 3, I will reduce the loop of the lab result. What I do is here, right? I start by doing the for loop of patient. I still keep this one, right? And after that, I take this guy, right? Which is the lab result, the whole lab result of one patient, patient I, right? -1 means that I remove the ID. I don't care about the ID, right? I take all the lab result. I check all at once, whether or not they are greater than equals 10, right? Once I get this type thing, right? It will be a matrix. Sorry, it will be a vector, okay? Containing true or false. When the lab result is greater than equals 10, we get true. If less than 10, we get false, right? Now we're going to have a vector, all right? And R handle true or false as 1 and 0 respectively. So now if we take the summation, you get the number of true, which is the number of lab result greater than equals 10, right? Now we take the whole thing and we check whether or not it's greater than 8. If it's greater than 8, we add 1 to M. That means we count that patient. All right. And then we add the ID of that patient to the vector ID, right? And at the end, we get the same result. All right. So if you guys are interested, right, R has a tip. You can highlight any part in your code. And after that, you push control and enter, you will get the result of that part. All right, separately. That means you don't need to run every single thing there, but you can just highlight and then you push control and enter and you get the result. I will check what I said, right? I set I to be 1 first. Okay, I set I to be 1 first so that I can check this, right? Because I don't have value of I yet, right? So what I do is that I take this guy, right? Greater than equals 10. I will show you guys and get true or false vector like that, right? True represent lab result, which is greater than equals 10, right? False, less than 10, right? At the end, right? I take the summation of the whole thing, right? I will get the numbers, right? Like this one is 7, which is less than 8, right? Which is the number of true, right? Number of not lab result, which is greater than equals 10. And then I check with 8. If it's greater than 8, I record. Less than 8, I don't record. Something like that. All right. So this one should be faster. Let's try. Okay. Okay. We get the same result as you can see. All right. Okay. Move on to approach number 4. This time we make it much shorter than last one. All right. The idea is here. I just mentioned that R is really good to handle a vector and a matrix. This one, we use a vector. This one, we're going to use a matrix. So it implies that we don't need a loop, right? So what I do is that I take the whole data set after removing the IDs, right? And then I check each component whether or not it is greater than equals 10. If it does, we record true, otherwise false. You can imagine that for this particular step, we're going to get a matrix of true or false. All right, so let's try. Okay, I highlight this part and then I control enter. I get the matrix true or false. You can see that for the first one, first row, it represents the first patient. The second row represents the second patient, right? You can imagine that if you take the summation of each row, right, you get the number of true, which is the number of lab result greater than equals 10. Right? So if you take the summation of the first row, you get the number of lab results, which are greater than equals 10 for the first patient. And if you do that for every single row, you get that number for each patient. All right. So what we're going to do is that we're going to take the built-in function row sums to the whole matrix. So what I get is that I will get the sum of each row. Let's try. So once I do that, I get these vector of numbers, right, according to each patient, right? For the first one, right, you can see that he or she has 7 lab results, which are greater than equals 10, right? For this patient, he or she has 4 records greater than equals 10, all right? Then at the end, right, I want to count only the number of patients who has the number of lab result under this condition greater than 8. So what I do is that I check the whole vector here compared to 8. Greater than 8, true. Less than 8 or equals 8, false. All right, so let's try. I run the whole thing, right? So what I get is this. A vector of true or false, right? True means that the first patient is not under this condition, right? If you see true, like this guy, right? That means this patient is under this condition. You can imagine that if you take these IDs, right, this patient, right, true or false, and put it into this guy, right, you get the data set with only the true row, which means all the patient under this condition. And we take the column 1, which is the ID, right? So for this guy, right, data with that vector, true or false, with number 1 here, that's going to be what? That's going to be the list of the ID of patients under this condition. And for this one, right, we take the summation of true or false, what we get is the number of patients under this condition. All right. So we can check that we get the same result. Okay. 1,478. It means we get the same result. All right. Okay. Now I'm going to compare every single one of them. All right. Based on runtime. All right. As you can see at the start, right, I check system time. And at the end of each approach, I check the system time again, subtracted by start. So I get the total runtime for each approach. Then I'm going to put it into a vector RT. So you're going to see at the end which one is the best. All right. To recall, right, the first one, we have 2 loops. Second one, we still have 2 loops. Third one, I reduce 1 loop. And the last one, we have no loop. Okay, and let's see which one is the best. All right, so I will start from the beginning, which is right here, right, to the end, right here, right? And let's see which one is the best. Okay, here's what I get. For the first approach, I get 0.13. The second one still 0.1213, right? A little better. The third one, I reduce 1 loop, I get 0.1. And at the end, for the last one, I get 0.026, which is much faster than the one earlier, as you can see, right? Now I plot, okay, right? You can see here, right? Start from the beginning here, right? Better, a little better, and then much better at the end. All right. Okay, so next, let's see if ChatGPT can help, right? So what I'm going to do is that I copy my data set, right? And I put it into here, right? I said, this one is my data, right? Okay. And then what I'm going to do is that I will take, right, the whole things here, right? And paste it into ChatGPT, right? And said, please generate an R code. Okay. So enter. Okay. You're going to see that ChatGPT provide exactly the same version as me, right? So this one is like the count, right? And they put the count into this matrix, right? Count greater than 8 and then 1. This is exactly the same as mine, right? Okay, so that means if you have the good keyword, of course, ChatGPT can help. But I got to tell you this. To be honest, yesterday, right, I test my code, right, before recording the video. And then I put a shorter version of my code into ChatGPT to check whether or not ChatGPT can reduce it to a short version. And then ChatGPT know about this problem already. But I got to tell you that at the beginning yesterday, right, I put this problem first into ChatGPT. And ChatGPT generated another version of the code, which is a little longer than this one. So if you guys want to see, right, here's the record of what ChatGPT generated first yesterday, right? So here's the full version, right? It's almost the shortest one, but still ChatGPT need to define a new function right here, right? And then do it like this, right? It's not that practical in my opinion, but still the idea is exactly the same. But the way to reach the the solution is a little bit different and need a new function like this, which is not very practical. But the thing is, I did that yesterday and I have ChatGPT reduce it to a shorter version already, which is my version, exactly the same as my version. So now ChatGPT know how to do it already, right? So I will say that my comments is that if you guys, right, do it for the first time, right, and put the problem directly into ChatGPT and have it, generate the code for you guys, you may get a little bit longer version of the code. But if you guys have a short version, a long version of the code, and you put it into ChatGPT and have it reduced to a short version, you get the best version. That's my comment. So I don't need to test it for you guys, right? But you can check. if you put this version, right, like this into ChatGPT and said, reduce it to the shortest version, ChatGPT can do it for sure. All right. So that's going to be it about ChatGPT. Okay. So guys, to wrap up what I did, right? So I think if we can make code shorter, faster, more efficient, it's good for everyone, for sure. We don't want to wait for too long, right? But it has another main benefit. Let's say that you guys have an old computer working on a large data set. It's not possible, right, with the first version of the code. But if you can make the last version of the code, it's possible to work even on your computer, right, old computer. So that's the second benefit. Speaking of ChatGPT that I show you guys, if we put a longer version of the code in ChatGPT and let ChatGPT reduce it to a shorter version, ChatGPT can do it perfectly under the free one. Okay. But if we put the problem directly into ChatGPT and let ChatGPT generate the code for you guys, sometimes it generates the right one, but not the best version. Okay. So if you guys have an idea to code at the beginning and put into ChatGPT, that's okay. That's perfect. But if you don't have a code at the beginning at all, you put a problem into that, you may get a longer version of the code. All right. It's possible. And this is the first episode. I will try to do more, right? More problems, real world situations, try to reduce code from longer one to the shorter one to the shortest one and make it more efficient. All right. So if you guys are interested in more videos related to these topics or some other topics about data science, especially by using our language, feel free to subscribe and leave the comments below in the case that you guys have questions, concern, or you want to share problems with me related to this topic or any other topics. Okay, so see you in the next video and hope you guys have a wonderful day.